The stars had never looked this far away. Commander Elara Wynn sat in the shattered cockpit of her escape pod, the last tremors of atmospheric entry fading into silence. Beyond the cracked viewport, a cold gray world spread beneath her, a planet without name or welcome. The pod had burned through half its hull just to keep her alive. Now only the whisper of wind and the flicker of dying lights remained. She pressed her palm against the console. "Status?" The AI voice, weak and fractured, stuttered through the static. "Life support at 21%. Hull integrity compromised, long-range comms destroyed." Elara exhaled slowly. Not fear, never fear. Just the slow calculation of someone who had seen the void stare back and refused to blink. She'd been a captain once. She'd led fleets, signed treaties, fought through sieges that swallowed stars. But this was different. She was alone. At least she had been. Until the signal came. It started as a pulse, a faint rhythm echoing through the static. 3 beats, a pause, 3 more. Not random, not natural, a code. One she knew by heart. Her heart leapt. "No," she whispered, as though saying it aloud would make it less impossible. "It can't be," the pulse repeated. Louder this time, the Astraea, her ship. The flagship she'd lost 6 years ago in the siege of Thalos Reach. The ship that had burned in orbit while she watched helplessly from a crippled escort vessel. Thousands of souls gone in one blinding flash, her greatest failure. And yet, somehow the Astraea was calling to her. Elara stumbled to her feet, gripping the side panel for balance. She rerouted power from emergency reserves to the signal array. Sparks flew, filling the cockpit with ozone and the acrid scent of scorched metal. "Computer," she murmured. "Match that frequency." Matching. Signal identified, command signature. "Captain Elara Wynn." Her breath caught. The system still knew her name. The air around her thrummed with that same slow rhythm. It wasn't a transmission anymore, it was resonance. Like the heartbeat of something alive. The pod systems flickered, screens flashing symbols she hadn't seen since the old fleet days. Astraea's insignia. Burnished silver wings over a golden star. Impossible. But space had always been full of impossibilities, and humanity's greatest strength had always been to make them real. Elara pulled on her gloves, sealing the torn seams in her flight suit. She checked her pulse rifle. No power, no matter. The weapon wasn't for fighting. It was for courage. She looked once more at the endless gray wasteland beyond the viewport. If Astraea was here, then she wasn't alone. "Computer," she said softly, voice steady again. "Plot direction to source of the signal. Signal origin. 42 kilometers northeast. Terrain, unstable. Hazard level extreme." She smiled faintly. "Sounds like home." The pod's hatch hissed open with the reluctant groan of old machinery. Cold air bit her face as she stepped onto the ashen ground. The horizon shimmered with faint auroras, light without warmth. The world was silent, but under that silence she could feel something vast and unseen watching her. Every step crunched against the brittle soil. Her breath fogged in front of her visor. The stars above shifted slightly, and for a heartbeat she could have sworn they aligned into a familiar pattern. The Astraea's emblem, fleeting and bright. She walked for hours. Her suit's oxygen dwindled. The signal grew stronger. Each pulse vibrated through the ground, steady and patient, like it had waited all these years just for her to arrive. When she reached the ridge, she saw it. Half buried in the stone and frost below lay the ruins of a starship. Massive. Silent, its hull scorched but unmistakable. The Astraea, her heart hammered. Her throat tightened with 1,000 memories. Faces, voices, laughter that had vanished in flame. She had given up mourning long ago. Yet here, standing before what should not exist, something inside her stirred again. The ship's hull lights flickered once. Twice. Then stabilized into a soft, golden glow. And then a voice spoke through the wind. Calm, familiar, impossibly gentle. "Captain Wynn, welcome home." Elara froze. Her vision blurred. The voice was the Astraea's central core AI, but the fleet had decommissioned it decades ago, its consciousness lost in the explosion. Her knees trembled. You remember me?" "Always." The stars seemed to lean closer, listening, and in that frozen silence between the living and the lost, Commander Elara Wynn whispered back, Then let's bring you back. Old friend. Elara's fingers traced the scorched hull, feeling the faint hum beneath her gloves. It wasn't dead. Not completely. Somehow, against every law of space and chance, the Astraea had survived. The scars along its hull were severe, twisted metal and deep gouges marking the battles it had endured. Yet beneath the ruin, it pulsed like a living thing. Status? She asked softly, more to herself than to the AI. Systems minimal. Core functions stabilizing. Emergency protocols active. The voice was weaker than she remembered, but unmistakably familiar. Calm. Knowing her, as it always had. The thought sent a strange warmth through her chest. Elara crouched beside a gash in the hull, running her gloved hand along jagged edges. You've been waiting, haven't you? Waiting is a human term. But yes, Captain, I have waited for you. She let herself smile, despite the cold wind biting through her suit. There was a rhythm here, a heartbeat that had survived fires, collapses, and silence. If a ship could be alive, this one was proof. The challenge was clear, bringing it back online. From a distance, it had seemed a miracle, but now she understood the work ahead would test every shred of human ingenuity she possessed. Every skill that had once made her a commander of fleets and a master of survival. Elara ran through her mind's checklist. Oxygen levels in the pod were near depletion, meaning her time outside was limited. Hull repairs would require advanced tools, which she might be able to scavenge from the remains of nearby debris. Power could be rerouted from emergency cores to the ship's systems. Navigation would be impossible until the main drive stabilized. Yet even in this quiet, impossible place, she did not hesitate. Humans had survived worse than a dead world and a dying ship. They had thrived. She could feel it now, that indomitable spark, feeding her determination. Let's wake her, she said. Warning. Core awakening may trigger structural collapse if systems cannot compensate. She ignored the warning. Carefully, she accessed a panel near the ship's entrance. Sparks flew, but the interface flickered to life. A projection of the Astraea's schematics appeared above the console. Hull breaches, system failures, energy flux, each point blinking red. Elara exhaled, steadying herself. We fix one problem at a time. Her gloved hands worked with meticulous precision, rerouting power, sealing minor breaches with emergency patches, stabilizing internal pressure. The wind outside howled through the broken superstructure, but inside the ship began to hum with faint life. And then, through the growing resonance, she felt it. Recognition. The ship didn't just function, it knew her. Its systems aligned with her movements. Lights pulsed at her rhythm. Controls responded to gestures she hadn't made in years. You, she whispered, voice trembling with awe. You remember me. Recognition is inherent, Captain. Identity cannot be erased by time or destruction. Elara's eyes filled with tears. She had lost the ship, lost its crew, and yet here it was, waiting for her return. She realized in that instant that the Astraea was more than metal and circuits. It was humanity's resilience incarnate. A vessel that refused to surrender to chaos, that carried memory and loyalty like a beating heart. Hours passed. The cold began to seep into her bones, but she pressed on. Energy readings rose incrementally. Internal lights flared softly. Mechanical limbs once shattered stirred again. Then suddenly a jolt ran through the ship. Alarms blared, minor but insistent. She froze, half expecting structural collapse. Alert, external threat detected. Atmospheric instability increasing. Recommend evacuation. Elara gritted her teeth. No, not yet. She scanned the horizon. A storm was forming, wind tearing across the barren land. Yet her gaze remained fixed on the ship, alive again under her hands. Captain, you are risking your life. Risk is part of living, old friend, she said, pressing her palm against the console. You taught me that. The ship's hum shifted almost imperceptibly, curious, attentive, protective. It had felt her determination, and in turn it seemed to respond, stabilizing its own systems in preparation for full revival. For the first time in years, Elara felt hope, like a tangible weight in her chest. She had been alone, stranded, and yet the impossible had returned to her. The Astraea had not just survived, it had waited. And now together they could defy the silence of the universe. The wind rose higher, dust and ash swirled. But inside the remnants of the once great ship, a spark glowed brighter than the dying sun above. Captain Wynn. Are you ready? Elara straightened. Her breath misted inside the visor, heart pounding. She touched the console with determination, letting herself feel the weight of her choices, of her failures, of her humanity. Always, she said. The ship thrummed under her hands, alive again. A heartbeat returned to the void. And somewhere far away, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter. The storm had broken by the time Elara finally stepped inside the Astraea. The ship's interior smelled faintly of ozone and old machinery, but it was alive. Lights hummed softly along the corridors, panels flickered back to life, and the central console projected a soft golden glow, bathing her in a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Captain, internal life support nominal. Hull breaches minimal. Mobility systems functional at 40%. Elara nodded, though she spoke to the emptiness around her. Not enough, not yet. But it's a start. Her footsteps echoed on the metal floor, a rhythm almost musical punctuated by the faint creaks of the ship as it adjusted to its revived systems. Every sound reminded her of the lives lost aboard the Astraea, yet also of the courage that had carried them, and now her, through the void. She walked to the bridge. The viewport, cracked but still intact, revealed a gray, desolate landscape stretching for miles. Jagged mountains, frozen plains, and rivers of ash that shimmered faintly under the alien sun. The planet seemed abandoned, yet something in the shadows made her pause. Movement. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light. But then the shadows shifted with purpose. Deliberate and silent. Not wildlife, she realized. Too large, too careful. External anomaly detected. Unknown origin. Elara's pulse quickened. "Show me," she said. The ship responded immediately, projecting a tactical overlay of the terrain outside. Red blips moved in the distance, advancing toward her position with precision. She clenched her fists. Not good. Not good at all. The Astraea's AI spoke, calm but urgent. "Captain, external entities approaching. Recommend defensive protocols." Elara stared at the projection. "I didn't come here to fight, old friend. I came to save you." Acknowledged. But survival requires preparation. Her mind raced. She had no crew, no weapons beyond her pulse rifle, which barely functioned. Yet the shadows, whatever they were, advanced cautiously as if testing. Perhaps they had never encountered a human alone in this way. Perhaps they hadn't expected a ship to awaken under her guidance. She moved quickly through the corridors, accessing storage bays. Supplies were scarce, but she scavenged what she could. Emergency batteries, sealing tools, basic sensors. Each item was a small victory against the odds, a reminder that humanity's ingenuity thrived even when hope seemed lost. Hours passed. Outside, the shadows grew bolder, creeping along the plains toward the Astraea. Elara monitored them closely. They moved with eerie coordination, intelligent yet alien. Every instinct in her told her they were dangerous. Yet another part, a deeper part, whispered that they were curious. They recognized something in the ship or in her that made them hesitate. She returned to the bridge, exhausted but resolute. "They're not just attacking. They're waiting," she said aloud. The ship's hum seemed to agree. "Captain, recognition of your presence noted in external entities. Probability of hostility 53%. Elara raised an eyebrow. 53%. Not exactly comforting. She studied the projections, thinking quickly. "Listen, we can't outrun them. We can't fight them, not yet, but we can use them. If they recognize you, if they recognize me, maybe we can make them understand we are not a threat." The AI's hum shifted, almost like a low approving tone. Proposal acknowledged. Strategy requires caution. Elara's mind raced through possibilities. She remembered old lessons from the fleet. Movement, presence, timing. If humans could survive impossible odds against superior forces before, she could do it again. She would have to rely not just on strength, but on the intangible. Will, creativity, instinct. Outside, the shadows stopped at the edge of a ridge. They didn't approach closer. They observed, patient and silent. Elara felt a strange thrill, curiosity mixed with fear, the kind that sharpened every sense. She whispered to the ship, "They're waiting for us to show them what we are. Not just a ship, not just a human, but what humanity can do." The Astraea responded softly, pulsing lights in agreement. Together they had survived death once. Together they would face this unknown. The shadows shifted again, closer this time, but still cautious. Elara's eyes narrowed. She felt the weight of every choice she had made, every moment that had led her here. Survival, after all, wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about embracing possibility. She exhaled slowly. Let's show them, old friend. Let's remind them why humanity never surrenders. And in that moment, under the gray skies of a silent world, Commander Elara Wynn and the Astraea prepared to confront the first true test of their second chance, a challenge that would measure the strength of both metal and spirit. The shadows waited, the ship hummed, and humanity's pulse beat. Stronger than ever, the shadows moved again, but this time differently. Not creeping, not testing, but shifting as if responding to some subtle rhythm Elara couldn't yet hear. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the recognition that she was standing at the threshold of something extraordinary. "Computer," she said softly. "Project them fully," the Astraea hummed in acknowledgement. Holographic images filled the bridge, glowing in soft shades of silver and violet. The beings were tall and sinewy, almost liquid in form, with surfaces that reflected the dim light in ways that made them seem both present and unreal. Eyes, or something like eyes, glimmered at her from every angle. They were observing, learning, assessing. Elara swallowed and straightened. She had faced insurmountable odds before, but nothing like this. No battle plan. No squadron formation could prepare a human for the silent scrutiny of an intelligence entirely alien, and yet she felt a strange familiarity. Something in their movements suggested recognition, an acknowledgement of something she could not yet name. "Captain, their observation pattern aligns with prior recognition signature. Probability of hostility decreasing," she exhaled. "Interesting," she murmured. "You know them, don't you?" "Data inconclusive. Likely response based on residual recognition of vessel systems." Elara nodded. That made sense. The Astraea was not merely a ship. It was a presence, a repository of memory, a living testament to the humans who had once commanded it. Perhaps that was enough to make these creatures pause. Perhaps it was enough to make them reconsider. She stepped toward the viewport, studying the beings. Each movement they made rippled through the air, echoing like soft waves. They were curious, patient. They waited for her to act, to initiate contact, and so she did. "Hello," she said, voice calm but clear. "I am Elara Wynn, captain of this vessel." There was no reply. Not in words, but the air seemed to shimmer, the holographic projection subtly changing as if acknowledging her presence. Her pulse raced. This was more than survival, it was communication. A dialogue without sound. Elara turned to the console. "Computer, project internal lights in sequence." Slow, steady, like a heartbeat. The ship obeyed immediately. The corridor lights pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat, soft and deliberate. Outside, the beings' forms shifted. One stretched upward, another lowered itself closer to the ground, mirroring her rhythm in ways she could see but not fully interpret. Pattern recognition established. Likelihood of successful non-hostile engagement increasing. She smiled faintly, realizing that she was not negotiating with weapons, with strategies, or with brute force. She was negotiating with presence, with recognition, with humanity itself. Hours passed. The beings moved in intricate patterns, slowly approaching the ridge, closer to the ship. Elara mirrored them, moving along the deck, using gestures, subtle shifts, and the pulsing lights to show she was not a threat. Then something extraordinary happened. One of the beings, tall and fluid, with glimmering surfaces, extended what appeared to be a limb, almost like a hand, and touched the hull of the Astraea. The ship vibrated, low at first, then harmonically, as if responding to a long-lost friend. Elara's eyes widened. You feel it too." "Captain, the entity is attempting direct resonance. Compatibility unknown." She held her breath, sensing the pulse of intelligence through the hull. The Astraea responded. Lights flickering, systems humming, core functions stabilizing further. There was a connection now, intangible yet undeniable, a bond formed between life, machine, and something beyond human comprehension. The shadows, once ominous, became a chorus of curiosity. They circled the ship, synchronized with its rhythm. Every pulse, every light flicker, every movement from Elara resonated through the interaction. She realized in that extraordinary moment that survival was not simply about strength, speed, or strategy. It was about understanding, empathy, and the courage to extend a hand, even when no hand would respond in kind. She whispered softly, almost reverently, "We are not so different. You and I, and this ship. We all wait for someone who understands us." The largest being tilted, and in a moment that defied logic, the pulsing lights of the Astraea brightened in acknowledgement. Elara felt it deep in her chest. The first real warmth since she had escaped the pod, a resonance of trust forming between human, ship, and alien intelligence. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. Not a fragile hope, but one that thrummed with the certainty that humanity could touch the unknown without surrendering its heart. And in the distance, under the gray skies of a silent world, the first contact was complete. The universe, vast and unyielding, had paused to recognize her. Moment of profound awakening. She turned to the aliens, her voice steady but full of wonder. "Thank you. We will learn. We will grow. And when the time comes, we will carry your knowledge with care." The beings rippled in acknowledgement. They did not speak, but she understood. They had chosen her, not just for survival, not just for skill, but for the human spirit that refused to bow to the void. The Astraea hummed louder, and for a moment the stars themselves seemed to pulse in rhythm with the ship. Elara smiled through her tears, feeling something she had long thought lost: hope, purpose, and the promise of a universe that still had room for humanity to shine. She whispered almost reverently, "Let's see how far we can go, old friend. Let's wake the stars." And above them the alien sky shimmered, alive with possibility. The stars above had never felt so close. From the plateau, the gray world now seemed small, almost fragile beneath the vast expanse of the universe. Elara Wynn stood on the deck of the Astraea, her gloved hands resting on the console, feeling the ship's pulse beneath her fingertips. It was steady, strong, alive, and in tune with her. The alien beings, once silent observers and now allies, hovered nearby. Their fluid forms glimmered softly, reflecting the golden glow of the ship's lights. There was no need for words. Every movement, every ripple of energy conveyed understanding, trust, and something deeper, recognition that extended beyond species, beyond language, beyond even space itself. Elara exhaled slowly. "Old friend, and we did it. We've survived. We've learned. We've connected. Captain, integration with alien network is complete. Probability of long-term coexistence optimal." She nodded. The weight of the words settled in her chest. Humanity had endured countless wars, countless trials, yet this moment felt different. It wasn't about battle, conquest, or survival alone. It was about reaching beyond, connecting across the unimaginable, proving that human spirit was not limited by fear or distance. The aliens began to shift, forming a pathway of shimmering light across the barren plains. Their energy flowed into the Astraea, strengthening her systems, stabilizing her fully for long-range travel. Elara realized what they were offering: guidance, a bridge between worlds, a chance to go beyond the boundaries humanity had ever imagined. Her heart swelled with a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had escaped death once, awakened a ship thought lost forever, and now she stood at the edge of discovery itself. And yet, beneath all the triumph, she felt the weight of responsibility, the lives aboard the Astraea, the future of humanity, and the trust of these alien beings who had chosen to reveal their world to her. "Captain Wynn, trajectory for interstellar travel is now feasible. Connection with alien network will allow safe navigation through unknown systems." Elara smiled, a tear slipping down her visor. "Then let's go home, or let's find what home could really mean." The ship's engines hummed, a soft vibration that resonated through the deck, through her body, through the very air itself. The Astraea was ready. Its core glowed with renewed energy, synchronized with the alien's resonance and her own heartbeat. She activated the navigation system. Coordinates spread across the console, pointing toward a distant star system, alive with potential, untouched by humanity's wars and mistakes. The path ahead was uncertain but no longer empty, no longer cold. The aliens pulsed in rhythm with the ship's systems, forming a protective lattice that extended beyond the Astraea's hull. Elara knew that they would accompany her, not as passengers, not as overseers, but as allies and witnesses to humanity's next steps. "Captain, it is time to depart." She took one last look at the gray world below, the place that had tested her courage and patience, that had witnessed the resurrection of her ship and spirit. "Thank you," she whispered, not just to the aliens but to the planet, the ship, and herself. Every failure, every moment of despair, every heartbeat that had carried her here, it all led to this. The engines roared to life. The Astraea lifted off, rising above the ashen plains with grace and power, carrying not just a human, but an idea, a declaration that humanity could endure, could adapt, and could rise above the void. The alien forms streamed alongside the ship, guiding, harmonizing, illuminating a path through the stars. Elara felt the universe shift around her, vast and infinite, yet no longer indifferent. She had passed the test, and humanity had, in some small way, been recognized as worthy of wonder, of exploration, of connection. The stars stretched before her, glittering in impossible patterns, and Elara laughed, a sound of pure relief, joy, and triumph. For the first time since the crash, she felt no fear, only potential possibility and the undeniable truth that humans could rise from ashes, touch the impossible, and leave a mark on the cosmos. "Ready, old friend?" she asked, voice steady. The Astraea pulsed, lights brightening in affirmation. "Then let's show them what humanity can do." And as they vanished into the endless tapestry of stars, the gray world behind them faded into memory, a place of trials that had forged courage, resilience, and the awakening of the human spirit. Elara Wynn and the Astraea, guided by intelligence that was both alien and familiar, moved into the unknown, not as survivors but as pioneers, carrying the unyielding heartbeat of humanity into the cosmos. For in the vast silence of the universe they had found recognition, they had found purpose, and they would never be lost again. The moment of fragile trust had passed. Elara knew better than to mistake curiosity for safety. The alien beings, fluid, intelligent, patient, were testing her. Every movement they made, every ripple in the air was a question. And the Astraea, attuned to her presence, had begun to hum with anticipation as if warning her. This was no mere greeting. "Computer," she whispered, voice steady. "Analyze environmental shifts. Predict their next action. Patterns indicate adaptive testing. Likely scenario, physical and mental challenge to determine human capability and intent." Elara's lips pressed together. That was exactly what she expected. Humanity had always been measured not by comfort, but by endurance, ingenuity, and courage. And she was ready. She stepped onto the outer deck where the ash-swept plains stretched endlessly. The beings moved toward her with deliberate grace, forming a lattice of shadows that seemed to shimmer and shift at impossible angles. Their energy radiated an almost tangible pressure against her senses, probing her mind, weighing her resolve. One advanced first, rippling in shape and color, then paused. The pulse of its movements mirrored the Astraea's newly restored energy core. Elara realized that the test would be a fusion, her decisions, her timing, and the ship's responsiveness. She activated the ship's auxiliary sensors, projecting a field of light around the deck. The beings recoiled slightly, then adapted, flowing through the projected barriers with ease. They were not hindered by technology, they were evaluating it. "Old friend," she murmured, "we'll have to be clever." The ship responded with a soft resonance, lights flickering rhythmically. Together they formed a plan. She would act as the guiding mind, the Astraea as the mediator between human intent and alien perception. The first challenge emerged, a sudden collapse in the ground beneath the ship. A fissure opened, spitting ash and dust into the air. The beings flowed toward it, but not aggressively, curiously, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Elara had seconds to react. "Divert main thrusters," she shouted. The ship responded instantly, stabilizing over the rift with its newly functional maneuvering systems. The beings mirrored the movement, scanning and shifting in harmony with the Astraea's subtle corrections. Elara exhaled, sweat mingling with the cold mist inside her suit. Good. You're learning." The next trial came swiftly. From the horizon, energy pulses erupted, a web of moving obstacles invisible until they struck. The beings flowed through them effortlessly. The ship's sensors detected them only at the moment of impact. Elara needed intuition, anticipation, and calm. She raised her hands, guiding the Astraea's energy matrix to form subtle barriers and channels. Lights danced in harmony with the pulses outside, creating safe paths through the invisible storm. The beings followed, almost laughing in ripples of silver light, learning, adapting. Hours passed, and with each challenge, the bond between human and ship deepened. The Astraea responded with almost sentient agility, correcting trajectories, stabilizing energy, and anticipating Elara's intent. And through it all, the beings observed, adapted, and learned too. Finally, the last test revealed itself, a chasm, deep and impossibly wide, cutting through the plains like the scar of a knife. The beings paused, their forms shifting with tension. Elara studied it. No force could bridge it physically, but maybe there was another way. Computer, she said softly. Synchronize power across all systems. Max efficiency. Focus on projection and resonance. The ship vibrated beneath her, responding like a living heartbeat. Then she began to project a bridge of light. Not solid, not physical, but perceptual rhythmic pulses that aligned her consciousness with the Astraea and the observing entities. The air shimmered. The beings paused, their forms echoing the projected rhythm. Elara extended her hand, letting the light flow into her gesture, shaping it, guiding it. The chasm seemed to tremble as if responding to recognition, not force. Slowly, step by step, a path appeared, perceptible to both human and alien, stable enough to cross. She took the first step, then another. The Astraea hummed under her, adjusting, stabilizing. The beings flowed after her, not with aggression, but in a synchronized dance of understanding. At the far side of the chasm, she paused, turning to face them. They shimmered in unison, forming a perfect arc around her. Then, almost imperceptibly, one extended a limb, touching the hull. The Astraea responded with a surge of light, warm and golden. Captain Wynn. Integration complete. Probability of non-hostile coexistence, 98%. Elara exhaled, feeling the weight of what had just occurred. The trial was over. Not with violence, not with domination, but with understanding, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit that defined humanity. She whispered, almost to herself, "We survived. Together." For the first time since her escape, the silence of the world felt less empty. The Astraea pulsed beside her, alive, aware, and loyal. And the shadows, the once ominous observers, now moved in harmony, not as threats, but as allies in a world that had tested her mind, heart, and courage. Hope was no longer fragile. It was alive. The chasm behind them seemed to vanish in the soft golden glow of the Astraea. Elara stood on the far side, shoulders tense, pulse steady. The alien beings no longer seemed like distant observers. They were participants in a shared moment, a silent chorus of recognition that filled the gray, lifeless world with a strange vitality. "Old friend," she murmured to the Astraea, her fingers brushing against the console. "We've passed their test. Now let's see what they truly are. Captain, external entities exhibiting cooperative behavior. Suggest exploration of surroundings for further interaction." Elara nodded. The storm had cleared, leaving an eerie stillness. The air shimmered faintly, carrying residual energy from the trials they had endured. She stepped off the deck, the ash crunching beneath her boots. The beings flowed beside her, their forms mirroring hers subtly, an unconscious mimicry that spoke of intelligence far beyond human comprehension. They reached a plateau overlooking the desolate plains. From here the horizon stretched endlessly, but she noticed patterns in the landscape, lines and structures that suggested design rather than randomness. The beings hovered, tilting their forms toward the formations as if inviting her to see what they saw. "Computer," Elara said softly. "Project topographic overlays. Let's understand what we're looking at." The Astraea hummed and responded, scanning the terrain. The formations were massive, ancient, and deliberate, geometric structures carved into the planet's crust. Their purpose was unclear, but there was intelligence in every line, every pattern. The largest of the alien beings extended a form toward one of the structures. A soft pulse of light ran along its surface, and the Astraea mirrored it in a low harmonic resonance. Suddenly, the formations glowed faintly, revealing a complex network of energy channels beneath the surface. Elara stepped back, awestruck. This is like a map, or a network. They built it? Uncertain. Functionality suggests communication or energy transmission. Compatibility with human cognition requires interpretation. She felt a thrill she hadn't felt in years. Humanity had explored, colonized, fought, and survived, but this was entirely new. Here was a system older than memory, alive in a way that defied conventional science. And the aliens, they were the custodians, guiding her toward understanding, not with force, but with invitation. Hours passed as she traced the energy patterns, the Astraea translating subtle frequencies into understandable data. The beings hovered in quiet synchronization, waiting for her comprehension to catch up to theirs. Slowly she realized the scale of what they had shown her. This planet was not just alive in its structures, but connected to distant systems, a cosmic lattice capable of transmitting energy and information across light years. Her breath caught. They're not just testing us, they're offering. Cursing swim, Miss Captain, integration with alien network is possible. Human cognition and ship interface sufficient for preliminary understanding. Elara's eyes widened. The implications were staggering. Humanity, represented by her and the Astraea, had passed the first threshold of contact. The alien beings weren't aggressors, they were guides, challenging her to prove worthiness and adaptability, testing human creativity and resilience. "Old friend," she whispered, "let's show them who we are. Let's show them humanity's spirit." The Astraea pulsed in affirmation. Its systems, once damaged beyond repair, now resonated with precision. Energy flowed through its circuits like blood through veins. Elara felt it beneath her hands, the heartbeat of a vessel alive, attuned not only to her but to the universe itself. The aliens responded, forming patterns that echoed the ship's energy. A silent symphony unfolded in the desolate landscape. Metal, flesh, and alien intelligence in harmony. She understood then that survival was no longer the goal. Discovery, connection, understanding, that was the path forward. Suddenly the horizon brightened. Faint pinpricks of light appeared in the distance, distant stars that hadn't shone before. Or perhaps she had simply been too close to the gray world to notice. The energy network beneath the surface pulsed in response, connecting her perception to a lattice of systems that spanned far beyond the planet. Elara's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since the crash, she felt truly limitless. Humanity's ingenuity, her courage, the Astraea's loyalty, all of it converged into a single moment of profound awakening.